Hello and welcome to another episode of the Transportation Exchange podcast presented by Rush Truck Centers of Canada. I'm your host, Jason Cuddy. On today's episode, we welcome Tom Spizzirri, who's a regional manager with Kalmar, USA. Tom, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Jason. Appreciate the opportunity to jump on the podcast and give you a little bit of information about myself and our company.
Excellent. Well, let's start with yourself. Maybe you can give us a bit of an insight of how you got into the industry and kind of your path to today's role.
Will do. Kind of crazy to think at this point, I've been in this industry nearly 40 years.
Wow.
Actually started with a dealer selling forklifts and material handling equipment in Chicago. Worked with them for 12 years. And then in 1987, we became an Ottawa dealer. And then in 1994, I jumped on board with Ottawa, and I've been with them ever since. So I've been with the company nearly 28 years.
Wow.
So it's been a good run. They've been a great company to work for, and I've enjoyed my 28 years here. So
excellent.
Looking forward to a few more before retirement.
Fair enough. Yeah, I know you've definitely put the time in, but yeah, as you said, I mean, it's a great company to work for, and maybe gets a bit of background history on the company. They go back further, and within this industry, they're definitely one of the innovators.
Absolutely. Just give you a little bit of history about the company. Kalmar Ottawa, we are actually part of a bigger corporation, Cargo Tech. And Cargo Tech, we manufacture and support on a global level transportation equipment and material handling equipment. We like, our claim to fame is that we handle one piece of our equipment handles 1 in every 4 containers on a global level.
Wow.
And we have production facilities in Stargard, Poland, Shanghai, China. And for the terminal tractors, our mothership is here in the U.S., out of Ottawa, Kansas.
Right.
Ottawa started as Ottawa Steel Products back in the 1940s, and they were repairing farm equipment. And then they started manufacturing farm equipment, and then some light construction type equipment as well. And in 1958, we built our first terminal tractor. So we like to think of ourselves and state that we are actually the product that started an industry.
Right.
Before we invented the terminal tractor with the hydraulic fifth wheel, there were no other products like that. So like I said, we're very proud of that fact that in a sense, we did invent a whole industry. And our primary facility is, as I mentioned, in Ottawa, Kansas. We cover about 38 acres. And from a production standpoint, we've got about 135,000 square feet. And we do R&D there. We have engineering there. We have parts. We have service. All of our people for the terminal tractor side of the business, for the most part, are based out of Ottawa, Kansas.
Right.
And we employ about 300 people out of that facility. I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. I was going to say the one piece I like that you have at that facility, which I wouldn't think of for a terminal tractor, you even have a little test track to drive them around and test them out on.
Yes, we do. We completed our test track about 3 years ago now. And frankly, one of the reasons we did that is because every truck that we produce, we would take on a road test. And before we had the test track, we were actually taking them through the streets of Ottawa, Kansas. So yeah, we built the test track, and that has worked out great for us. And the other thing that's nice about the test track is when we have customers come down, they can get in the truck and they can drive it around the test track.
Right.
So
excellent. And then so that kind of leads us to, where we are today and the different offerings. And I think most people, with the shunt trucks, you don't really, obviously they're not usually on the road. They're usually in a warehouse working kind of behind the scenes. So maybe not everyone's overly familiar with the fact that there's kind of more than one truck available to consider for your application.
Absolutely. Yeah. We basically offer 3 different models. We're pretty simple in a sense. We offer a 4x2 off-road version, and then we offer a 4x2 DOT version. And then we offer actually a 6x4 DOT version. And the reason we go from a 4x2 to a 6x4 totally has to do with road legal weights.
Right.
So in every area, it's a little bit different. I think in Canada, it's anything above 90,000 pounds, if I'm correct.
Right.
You need to have a tandem type truck. So we offer different models, and that's in our diesel portfolio at this time. We are currently, and I'll talk a little bit more about this in a few minutes, but we are currently in the process of doing some fine tuning to our electric product. We're going into our next phase of electric, which is our T2E Plus, or our Gen 2 version of that tractor. And with all the tractors, they can be tailored around the customer's particular needs, depending on the application, the type of operating conditions they're in, things of that nature, the load weights, things of that nature. That's what we look at when we look at the different models.
Yeah, it makes sense. And that's kind of, I guess, another thing I wanted to dive into with is, again, because it's not everyone's in vision all the time, knowing what to ask or look at when spec'ing. Obviously, I know I'm familiar with, obviously you're kind of, for lack of words, the generic kind of general freight version, but obviously you can beef it up if you're heavy hauling, if you're carrying, like significant weight. So, what are some key things that people need to be asking or considering when they're looking at the different type of applications for their product?
Well, first off, we need to determine, again, I mentioned we offer off-road and DOT versions. The first thing we need to consider, if it is going on any sort of public roadway, okay, anytime it touches a public roadway, you really need to go with the DOT version.
Right.
Okay. Some of the other questions that when I'm in front of a customer, I like to look at their yard conditions. Is it paved? Is it smooth? Do they have any hills or ramps or recessed loading docks, things of that nature? The other thing that I talk to customers about, were there any challenges that they've had in the past with their current equipment? Because, in most cases, if they've had issues with the previous tractor, with today's technologies and all the options that are available and items that are available, we can typically offer a solution for those problems.
Right.
And that's really what it's all about, is offering the customers solutions for what they're doing today and help them to be more efficient and more productive.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Those are the main topics that I like to cover with the customers.
Yeah, and I think the point of, what has been working or what has been working for you when you talk to customers and replacing something is key, and especially if they're changing over from different OEMs, because, something they may be used to that's been causing them a headache is something that, is a non-issue with your product, or, something that from a technology point of view, year over year things change, and what didn't work back then, maybe, that's resolved now just by itself, but it's a good thing to know and have a conversation about.
Yeah. And our equipment, and we are using such a wide variety of applications. When you look at our equipment, it's used in warehousing distribution, which is I kind of like you mentioned, your run-of-the-mill type application.
Yeah.
But then we also are heavily involved in heavy applications such as steel, ports, rail yards, things of that nature. We've got a couple big customers in the intermodal business up in Canada. And, again, we can specify those tractors with certain options and items that add value to the tractor, to help reduce the overall operating costs for one, and help the equipment perform better and be more productive. So,
yeah, I think it's really knowing the application of where it's going to be used. And I think, like you said, either asking the questions or going on site to look at the application, because, sometimes what you're told is not necessarily what the real condition is. And, your version of, uneven ground and someone else's may be a little different, but knowing the product and what it's designed to do, you can spec it accordingly to meet the expectation of what the customer is expecting it to do for their application.
Yeah, absolutely correct. And quite frankly, in a lot of cases, you're dealing with somebody that really doesn't know the application.
Right.
You may be dealing with a purchasing agent or somebody, that's working in an office environment that isn't involved in the actual moving of trailers and things of that nature. So they really don't know what the application is.
Right. Yeah. And I guess another thing that, changes is, you get different trends in the industry, right? So obviously now we're starting to see the push to electric, but, within the industry itself, any trends, anything you've seen differently over the last, handful of years that are migrating into the world of shunt trucks?
Couple areas that we've seen really significant growth in, I guess I would say, is the 3PL industry. You know, a lot of the major corporations, whether it be distribution or manufacturing, whatever, you know, they want to tend to stick to their core business of what they know best. So they'll hire a 3PL company to come in and provide the services for them.
Right.
And they'll either do it either with just the equipment. You know, we've got a lot of companies that will provide the equipment operators, basically a turnkey type operation. You know, the other thing that we see too is, you know, within our dealer organization, the rental industry has grown tremendously.
Yes.
I know Rush as a whole, I think Rush is up to, 150 units within their rental fleet.
Yep, I think
which is phenomenal. So again, we're seeing more and more customers go that route instead of owning their own equipment and having that equity on their own books.
Yeah, no, good point. Like you said, we do see it. I mean, the rental fleet is increasing year over year, and, you know, the utilization seems to be, you know, growing as well. So as much as we add to it, the demand keeps, you know, keeping pace or almost outstripping it sometimes. So that's a good point. You're definitely seeing that for sure.
Yes, absolutely.
And, you know, looking forward, and you talked about it a little bit on the beginning, but I guess the hot topic for everybody, and as we see it, and, you know, there's carb changes coming out in the next few years, and just overall a focus to green and zero emission vehicles. What does the future look like from Kalmar Ottawa's side with regards to the electric product line?
Well, going back to carb for just a second, I just want to mention, you know, kind of throw it in there that all of our diesel products meet all the current carb and EPA regulations, no matter what they are and where they're operating. But, you know, the electric, as I mentioned, you know, a little bit ago, we are in the process of introducing our next generation electric terminal tractor. We're terming that our T2E Plus. The big advantage of that, or there's several advantages of that actually, is we have actually partnered with Cummins. So we're offering the Cummins solution. And this will be an Ottawa, Kansas produced piece of equipment.
Okay.
So from a support standpoint, we really have an advantage over all of our competitors because we have the backing of Ottawa, the oldest and largest terminal tractor manufacturer in the world, as well as Cummins. And, you know, with the Cummins solutions, it gives us some significant advantages over our previous model. And a couple of them are, number one, it offers DC fast charge.
Okay.
With the CCS1 plug. Okay. It also offers us thermal temperature management system. On our previous models, I couldn't offer you a truck in Canada,
right?
Because it wouldn't operate in cold climates.
Yeah. No,
so it really didn't do much good up in Canada. And really the third biggest thing is that we eliminate the transmission, so it's a direct drive to the rear axle.
Okay.
So those are really the biggest things. And we're offering what is nice about it too. We are offering different models and different versions in a sense. So we're able to offer 152 kilowatt or 182 kilowatt, which again, that really depends on the application and running time. So basically you're talking energy storage system,
right?
So your batteries. So that all really relates to operating time and running time between charges and how long you can get out of a shift and things of that nature. And then we're also offering different capacities, all the way from 81,000 pound capacity, all the way up to 195,000 pound capacity. Oh, wow. So it's a pretty significant product range. Mm-hmm. And the other thing that's nice about our tractor, there is virtually no difference in the cab or the way the tractor operates from our diesels. About the only significant difference, if you were to climb into one of our electrics, but the only significant difference is going to be your dash cluster. Obviously, it's going to have different gauges and readings within the dash cluster. Other than that, virtually everything is the same. So a driver that's used to driving a diesel can jump in an electric and operate just fine.
Yeah. And I can speak to that. I was down there a couple of years ago and drove the first generation, and inside it looked no different. It felt no different. The biggest thing for me was how quiet it was. I couldn't get over, you're used to, they live a hard life, these trucks, so they get beat up pretty good. And so, there's a lot of shaking, a lot of rattling, and just a lot of noise in general. But this thing, driving around the grounds there, it was so quiet. It was unbelievable for a shunt truck how quiet this thing was. And but like you said, from hopping in and driving it, you didn't really need to know anything more as far as how to operate it. And other than a few big boxes hanging off the frame for the batteries, it didn't look any different either. So it
didn't. It didn't. And because it is basically the same truck, just with a different drivetrain, if you would.
Yeah. Yeah. No,
that's really what it boils down to.
Yeah. And I think that helps, right? I think it helps, as you integrate that into the fleets, and that's kind of, where we see a lot of the future going on, to make it very simple for, the companies who are purchasing these to have them into their fleet, that, if they have a mix of it, at least, there's no confusion for the drivers. It's pretty straightforward other than the charging piece, but that's, that's something everyone's going to learn how to do anyways.
Yeah. And, with electrics, we have not released our next generation truck, our T2E Plus. We are in the process of doing considerable amount of testing and validation, because as we all know, several manufacturers have jumped into the electric arena, and not only terminal tractors, but trucks, cars, you name it.
Right.
And they've performed mediocrely. I don't know if that's a word, but they've performed okay.
Yeah.
But when we release it, we want ours to outperform everything else that's out there on the market.
Yeah.
And since we're standing behind it, we want to make sure that it's going to do the job that we say it's going to do.
Right. And it's nice to have it do it in all markets too, right? It works, that product worked really well in, warm, dry climates. But like you said, when you get up to the Northeast, especially, you get the winters and then the cold, it's, you expect some sort of performance degradation just because of what's involved, but it still needs to function. So you want to make sure it's rolling.
Absolutely. I mean, when you look at it, basically, if you look at the United States, the truck wouldn't perform anywhere north of the Mason-Dixon line.
Right. Yeah.
That was kind of our internal joke there is, once you got north of the Mason-Dixon line, the truck wouldn't perform in the past, in the cold weather. So,
yeah. So
we want to make sure when we do it that it's done right and it's going to perform to the customer's expectations.
Yeah. Well, it's definitely something to look forward to. I know, it's a hot topic along all the OEMs. So to see your offering come to light and be able to come to market soon, I think will be a huge step for a lot of people trying to move that green initiative in their fleet. And, I think from an operating point of view, it makes sense because it stays home. It doesn't go very far. So it's a good facility for it to run in for sure.
Definitely. And you're absolutely right there. It is the perfect environment for an electric type of vehicle.
Yeah, definitely.
Because it doesn't leave the property typically, or if it does, it's brought back to that domicile where it can go back to be charged.
Yeah. So the infrastructure is not as intense if you're trying to run across the country with it. And like I said, it's easy to keep on top of and make sure you're not stranded somewhere when there's no range anxiety with these ones, put it that way.
Exactly. Yeah, my daughter and son-in-law, they have an electric car. I won't say which one, but if they can't really take it on trips.
Yeah.
Because they have to stop every 2 hours to charge it up, and it just doesn't work for that type of application.
Yeah, no, for sure. And like you said, with this one, you come home for sure every day, and if not, you don't even leave the yard. And it's the ideal location to definitely have something electric in your fleet to start with, for sure.
Absolutely.
Excellent. Hey, Tom, I want to thank you for hopping on and doing this. Giving some insight and some background to Kalmar Ottawa and their product offering, what's coming in the future, and sharing your background as well. I greatly appreciate your time.
Well, again, I greatly appreciate the opportunity. It's very exciting times for all of us.
Definitely.
Challenging, but exciting.
Yes, no, good point. Excellent. Well, hey, that concludes today's episode. I want to thank Tom from Kalmar Ottawa for joining us. To catch up on past episodes, check out transportationexchangepodcast.ca. And until next time, thanks for listening.